Hello and welcome to Talking Turkey. I'm your host, David Lepeska, and with me today is returning guest Fiona Mullen, director of the Cyprus-based consulting firm Sapienta Economics. Hello, Fiona, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, David.
We are speaking on September 15, a few days after dueling visits to Cyprus by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who was in Nicosia on Saturday to meet President Anastasiades and announce a new joint security training center, and Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar, who was in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus on Sunday to witness Turkish military exercises. Pompeo's visit came about 10 days after the U.S. announced the partial lifting of its arms embargo on Cyprus, which had been in place since 1987 in an effort to avoid an arms race on the island, which has been, of course, divided between the North and South since 1974, when the Turkish military invaded to head off an Athens-backed coup. In his statement issued late Saturday, Pompeo said, in reference to the U.S. and the Republic of Cyprus, "I dare say that our relationship has never been better," which to me seemed interesting because as tensions have spiked in recent weeks between Turkey and Greece, Washington has not always shown itself to be entirely on the side of Athens and Nicosia. I mean, just look at President Trump's almost bi-weekly compliments of Turkey's President Erdogan. What's your view of this, Fiona? Have relations never been better?
I think he's right, actually, that what you've seen, it started even before the current government, which is, centre-right, so more in favour of, let's say, Atlanticist policy, etc. Even before that, the discovery of gas in both Israeli and Cypriot waters really triggered first of all, warming of relations with Israel, but this was strongly encouraged by the US as well. So in some senses, it's a kind of continuity of that. And what you've seen is all of these growing relations with Israel, Egypt, and so on, but with the US sometimes in the background and sometimes in the foreground. And culminating in the, at least in theory, lifting of the arms embargo. But I think what you're seeing with the Trump versus Pompeo is probably more to do with internal divisions in the US than it is to do with relations with Cyprus. But I think the US is, essentially trying to wean Cyprus off its traditional, certainly economic and to some extent political dependence on Russia. So it's part of a whole charm offensive.
Right, exactly. I mean, Pompeo also said, we know that all the Russian military vessels that stopped in Cypriot ports are not conducting humanitarian missions in Syria, adding that Cypriot officials listened to his concerns on the issue. In a tweet on Sunday about this, you said you were surprised the U.S. still thinks there's something Nicosia has failed to do to satisfy Washington. Please expand on that, if you would, a bit. What are the U.S. concerns in terms of Russia-Cyprus?
So it would have been about maybe 2 to 3 years ago now. The US started more publicly leaning on Cyprus to cut ties with a specific list of Russian nationals, and it was my understanding that Cyprus had done that. So it might have just been a general remark to keep the pressure up on Cyprus. But I mean that this, I'm sure you've seen the Al Jazeera stories and stuff like that. But more specific, there were specific individuals that the US was not very happy about. Of course, I can't remember any of them now, if you ask me. But and so I had understood that Cyprus had done something about all of them. So, excuse me. It was interesting that he said this. He hinted there was still more to do.
Around the same time that Pompeo's statement was issued, President Anastasiades, in a series of tweets, said, quote, "I informed Secretary Pompeo of our readiness for the delimitation of our maritime zones north and west of Cyprus with Turkey, either through bilateral negotiations or by recourse to the International Court of Justice. I urge Secretary Pompeo to adopt a proactive stance and exert every effort to stop Turkey from implementing any illegal actions or plans as regards to the fenced area of Varosha. It sounds to me like the Cypriot view is that the U.S. could do a bit more, maybe even a lot more, in terms of sort of herding its NATO ally Turkey toward cooperation and negotiation.
Yes, I mean, what the Greek Cypriots have always been frustrated about is that Turkey's been drilling in the areas declared by the Republic of Cyprus as its EEZ since May 2019, and nobody really did much about it. I mean, the EU finally sort of sanctioned two individuals that no one had ever heard of. But I think the whole the fact that, if you like, Turkey's now rattling Greece's cage is sort of bittersweet for the Cypriots. That they like it insofar as it's brought the rest of the world's attention to this whole issue of the EastMed and Turkey's how Turkey asserts its claims, let's say, to put it diplomatically. So it's part of that. I think they're taking that opportunity that everyone's saying, "Whoa, hang on a minute, this could end up in a military clash." So we need both the US and the EU and NATO and to put their weight into trying to de-escalate that, and at the same time make sure that Cyprus doesn't get left out of that conversation.
Right. I mean, but it's interesting that Pompeo was very diplomatic about this. He said in his statement, countries in the region need to resolve disagreements on security, energy, maritime issues diplomatically and peacefully. Increased military tensions help no one but adversaries who would like to see division. Following weeks of tensions between Turkey and Ankara, mainly over maritime rights and sovereignty issues in the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean. Ankara and Athens are, to begin, we've heard, technical military talks today at NATO headquarters in Brussels. How do you expect those talks to proceed, Fiona? Is it too much to expect any real progress toward meaningful negotiations?
Well, I think... what I found was funny about this, I am sure that Greece and Turkey at the, let's say, operational level, that their militaries are talking to each other all the time. That's why when the vessel got rammed a few weeks ago, it didn't end up in a war. That's why when a plane accidentally gets shot down, they don't immediately go to war. So I'm sure there's constant.
Really, that's interesting. I mean, I just want to say,
how could it be otherwise? Is really my kind of assumption.
It seems like it, but I just spoke to maybe Harry Timitras last week, and he said there's not even dialogue between the two right now, so they have to start a dialogue. But you're saying there is some
dialogue. So there's a difference between the sort of
I see
people on the ground. I don't know. It's just, but yeah, that there isn't any sort of political dialogue, but I think that's different from
there's no official dialogue where there's a behind the scenes military.
Yeah, I mean, I put it this way. I think we would have been in a lot more trouble by now if they weren't actually communicating with each other. But reasonable. Yeah, I mean, I think, going back to what you said about Pompeo being so careful in his language about Turkey, it sounds like the US has put its weight behind trying to get that conversation to happen. But that's military sort of technical talks, isn't it? Rather than let's delimit the EEZ or maritime zones and so on. But it's a good start. I mean, the fact that the Oruç Reis, the Turkish Petroleum Corporation vessel, headed off just before they started and things like that. I hope it's coming to what I had said before, that it looks like it's a lot of theatre before everybody gets down to talk.
Turning to gas in the Eastern Mediterranean. And Pompeo said the Republic of Cyprus has the right to exploit its natural resources, including the right to hydrocarbons found in its territorial sea and its exclusive economic zone. Yet, even though I think it was discovered, a decade ago now, Nicosia has not yet developed its two gas fields, now Calypso and Aphrodite. That gas, I think, has not yet made it to the market. I'm wondering why. Is this merely because it just takes a good deal of time to develop these huge offshore fields, or is there another underlying issue? The last time we spoke, you said that it was crucial to resolve the Cyprus issue first, and maybe that is key. But again, Harry Timitrosh, I spoke to last week, was saying that Eastern Mediterranean gas may never find a market in Europe, and that it might only be of value among the Eastern Mediterranean players: Cyprus, Turkey, Israel, Egypt. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I think Cyprus missed a trick when it discovered the gas because prices were high and there would have been more options to extract it, but they were so because from the very beginning the gas policy has been influenced and seen through the prism of the Cyprus problem policy. I think they were hoping this would make them. So instead of just looking at it from a commercial point of view, they thought, how can this make us more important diplomatically? And so they wanted to carry on and see if they'd got more gas. So they missed that opportunity with Aphrodite. So now they're stuck with a field that is not enormous. I mean, it's a fairly good size, but gas prices are on the floor. And now, Chevron announced that it's going to take to buy out Noble. Noble Energy is the one which has the Aphrodite field. It's the lead company there. So as time has gone on, and other gas fields have been found. The Egyptians found a much bigger field, the Zohr field.
Zohr, yes.
Suddenly, Aphrodite becomes less valuable, but also even on top of that, of course, we've got. Sorry, I'll repeat that. But also, we've got over time the fact that we now have all of this trouble in the EastMed, and that's probably going to put off companies. That they don't. It's going to be a difficult sell to drill when when you might have to face a Turkish warship. Of course, that drives Greek Cypriots bananas. They think that's precisely why people should be making sure Turkey doesn't do this. But if you're a company, this is what you're going to be. These are the calculations you're going to be making.
Finally, letting.
What I should say though, that there are still, of course, these are generally people who are. There are still people who say, look, there is a future for natural gas in the EastMed, but it will be regional. It's not going to be sell it to, China. It's not going to be sell it even to Western Europe. It will have to be regional because of the cost of extraction and so on and so forth. So it's something that company people always remind you that oil and gas is a very, very, very long game. So, it might not be next year, but it might be in the next 20 years. That's assuming, of course,
so the
renewables don't take over.
Right. And so this famous EastMed pipeline is just a pipe dream now.
I think, yeah. I mean, who knows? Some people are saying I do think, put it this way, if it happens, it will be because there's been a geopolitical decision to somehow link Cyprus and Israel to Europe with something physical. But I mean, that's already happening with the.
It won't be about the market.
Yeah. But as you know from like Nord Stream 2 and all of these kind of things, pipelines. The politics of pipelines goes on for a long, long time, and sometimes they don't get built.
Finally, letting Secretary Pompeo guide my interview, he said in his statement the United States continues to support a comprehensive settlement to reunify the island as a bizonal, bicommunal federation. We're approaching the 50-year mark with Cyprus as a divided island in 4 years. Do you see any chance that the current Turkey-Greece tensions could lead to, starting these talks today, maybe it's going to lead to real negotiations and possibly some sort of agreement? Might all that lead to sincere talks on Cyprus, or does this lack of momentum linked to gas, as you just described, mean that there's little momentum toward Cyprus settlement talks?
A few weeks ago, I would have been very pessimistic and said no chance of Cyprus talks. I think now, and especially with Pompeo saying it and the EastMed 7 saying it as well, I think that there's a recognition that at the very least you need talks to be underway to help the broader de-escalation in the region. And this is the interesting thing, that it doesn't necessarily mean that you will get a solution of the Cyprus problem, but what you certainly do get is whenever there are proper negotiations on the Cyprus problem ongoing, everybody's better behaved. So, and I think in the context of trying to, it looks like there's going to be a genuine push for Greece and Turkey to sort out their maritime differences, and you can't really do that if you don't also sort out Cyprus, Turkey at the same time. So, how you do that? Will it be talks on a comprehensive settlement of the Cyprus problem, or will it be what Anastasiadis was suggesting of let's just sort out the maritime issues? I think it's not quite clear yet, but I would say it's going to be. Everyone is saying, after the election, the Turkish Cypriot elections in October, that there ought to be a push. But at the moment, I'm fairly sceptical, saying, look, there'll be talks about talks, but I don't quite know if we'll get back to the table. And whether we do, I think will depend a lot on how much pressure is brought to bear by all the other external actors.
Right, you mentioned the Northern Cyprus presidential election, which had been scheduled for April, but was delayed due to the pandemic, and is now set for October 11, and will likely be followed by a runoff a week later. The incumbent, Mustafa Akıncı, has kind of sought to defend the honor and rights of Turkish Cypriots in the face of sort of a condescending attitude on the part of Erdogan, who recently called Turkish Cypriots foster children. Akıncı is increasingly seen as problematic by Ankara, which has appeared to support either Ersin Tatar or Kudret Özersay. There are some 10 candidates in the field, Fiona, so please help us sort all this out.
And there's also a different opinion poll every week saying whoever the polling agency likes is going to win. So it's really difficult. I mean, the ones to pay attention to is obviously Mustafa Akıncı, the incumbent, Ersin Tatar, who's currently the prime minister in the north, and then Tufan Erhuman, who is normally in third place, but there's been a couple of polls suggesting he's in second place. Özersay is way down now. He's, the best he's got, there was a Gazici poll puts him at 9.2%. That one also reckoned that Tatar could win in the second round, but really, and we were talking about what's that term, the margin of error, that he would get 50.8. But a lot of people are saying, well, they're questioning whether that poll is really, really robust. But but this is the problem. There's so many different polls saying so many different things that other polls have Akıncı winning and Tatar coming second. And like I say, there was another one, I think it was called Red Border, who reckoned that Tatar wouldn't even get into the second round. So it's all, who knows?
It seems strange to me that Turkey has yet to put its full weight behind any candidate with less than a month to go. Is that the norm? Is it usually like that?
Well, I think this is Turkey doesn't want to be Turkish Cypriots generally quite would resent it if Turkey showed its hand so obviously like that. It tends to backfire. I mean, a few years ago, and I'm going to forget all the names now, but Turkey tried to influence.
Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, so a few years ago, Turkey tried to influence who would be head of the UBP, which is Tatar's party at the moment, and they failed because Dervish Eroglu, who was I think not the leader at the time, but he was enough of a canny operator to make sure Turkey didn't get its own way. So that's why I think it's not up front and center, but what you have seen is, for example, after a very, very long dry period, Turkey has finally released some money for the budget, for the Turkish Cypriot administration's budget. So that kind of helps Tatar, and things like that. But it's a funny split in northern Cyprus. Let's say if Akıncı wins, there's likely to be a legislative election after that, but it will still be UBP, the other guys who will end up as the largest party because they're because of this patronage clientelist system.
Going back to Erdogan's foster children line, I wanted to ask a little about that. I wonder how real you see the tensions between Turkey and Turks maybe and Turkish Cypriots. There seems to be sort of a condescension on the one side for having saved them from Greece and resentment on the other for maybe being seen as lesser than. I always thought Turkish Cypriots were huge fans of Turkey for the most part. Last time we spoke, you said that Greek Cypriots, their kind of main issue is that they never really think about Turkish Cypriots.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe Turkey never really thinks about Turkish Cypriots either.
Yes, possibly. I mean, it's a sort of, it's a bit, I think both communities have, let's say, interesting attitudes towards the so-called motherlands. Is on the one hand, if you ask Turkish Cypriots, do you want guarantees? Do you want the army here? You normally get a pretty large majority saying yes. But what they are worried about is increasing influence of, especially, let's say, not just Turkey, but AK Party Turkey in their cultural, social, and political life. Because Turkish Cypriots are very, very secular. They are children of Ataturk in that sense, and they don't like what they see as attempts to influence the education system and so on and so forth. So they sort of it's
so that would suggest that tension has likely increased considerably over the past 2 decades.
Yeah, I mean, you generally get it. It's generally the left wing that talks about this more. But I would even say, I mean, this is why it's amusing seeing Tatar going into prayer rooms and things. I mean, he's definitely from the secularist tradition as well. So you see him not being able to kneel down properly and things like that. But it's a complicated relationship. It's there's this partly a culture of dependency, but on the other hand, they that ultimately Turkish Cypriots want to be independent one way or another, and this is their problem at the moment. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They're afraid of what will happen in a federal Cyprus, that they'll be overburdened by or overtaken by the Greek Cypriots, and at the moment they're afraid they're going to be swallowed up by Turkey, and both on business and on cultural and social matters as well.
So who do you expect to come out on top on October 18th, assuming there's a runoff? Or maybe I should ask, do you expect the winner, whoever it is, to encourage cooperation and improve the outlook for talks for some sort of settlement?
I think so. I would say, if I had to put money on it, I would say the second round would be Akıncı and Tatar. And it may be. I still think Akıncı might have the edge, so that means the Greek Cypriots will be more willing to get back to the table if it's Akıncı, and Turkey doesn't like Akıncı so much because he's a little bit too independent for them. But I think, let's say, if it's true that it's in Turkey's interest to have this whole maritime stuff sorted out, then in a way it doesn't matter who wins. That they will be, if it's in Turkey's interest to get back to the table, then whoever wins will be back at the table. Whether that ends up in a deal or not is a different question.
That's interesting. Akıncı winning again would be kind of thumbing the nose at Turkey, which has kind of made it pretty clear that they're not fans of Akıncı.
Yeah. But like I say, Turkish Cypriots are more independent than certainly than Greek Cypriots would have you believe.
Anything, that's kind of all I've got for you today. Anything we haven't talked about? Anything you'd like to mention that we haven't discussed?
I can't think of anything in particular. I mean, it's things are all. I think what's interesting about the current situation is how everything's different. That you don't have a single US. You have Pompeo, and then you have Trump. You don't have a single EU. You have France, and then you have some of the others, and
Germany,
that makes it very difficult to. It's far more difficult to predict what's going to happen next. Because of all these curveballs.
Right. There seems like there's a united front nowhere except Turkey and Greece, in a way.
Yes.
Okay. Fiona Mullen of Sapienta Economics. Thanks so much for talking to us. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Bye.
You can follow Ahval News Online podcast series through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, and Spreaker. All you need to know about Turkey is here, for your ears, mind, and attention. Thank you for listening to our podcast.